Mr. Kelly. Welcome everybody to Economic Management. This is a new world that we're getting into for the last 8 weeks, so I'd like to thank everybody for being here. Councillor McLeod, you're here. I'll do a little roll call.
Yeah, I'm here.
Councillor Tweel.
He was frozen. It freezes up.
Councillor Tweel.
Present.
Who else we got? Councillor Yankoff.
I'm here.
Present. Philip Brown. Yeah, present.
Sarah Brown's here. Wayne Long is here.
Yeah.
Laura Lee.
Yeah.
Charlotte Nicholson. Charlotte, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Who else we're looking for? Peter Kelly.
Here.
Ron Atkinson.
Ron's probably on mute.
Ron, are you on there?
Sorry, guys. Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Jill Stewart.
Jill's taking minutes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Is there any declarations of conflict of interest?
None.
Approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, are we going into, is there a closed session here?
Yes,
Agenda?
there is. Yes, there is.
Is that in the package that was sent out last?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have that. I'll have to look back. Okay, thank you.
Philip, it was sent in 2 different emails, Philip.
Okay, I think I just opened the first one. Thank you. I'll open the other
All
one.
right. So do we have approval of the minutes for March 10th?
Looks good.
Any business arising for those minutes?
Yes.
I do.
Yes, I do.
Surprise. Go ahead. Yes, Councillor Tweel.
Okay, thank you. If you look under the introduction of new business, item 7B, events guidelines. I talked about doing an extended version in the events guidelines policy, so that when potential event organizers come into City Hall to get a copy, it would have a section in there that would explain about the no smoking bylaw and some of the prerequisites that would be required to ensure that there's total compliance with the no smoking bylaw, particularly in our parks and recreation facilities. So I wanted to do an expanded version of that. Of course, with the virus, didn't have the time to sit down with Mr. Kelly to give him my thoughts so we could bring a draft to the committee. So I just wanted to let you know, Chair, that that's something that's still on the radar. And when I have the opportunity to meet with Mr. Kelly, then we'll bring that draft in for the committee's consideration.
Thank you, sir. Any problems with that? Anybody? Any questions?
Mr. Chair, this item
Yes,
is
go ahead.
This item is on the agenda today and is in the report. Staff have had discussion with Mr. Kelly, and it is on the agenda for the committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You okay with that, Councillor Tweel?
Is that in the closed or open session, Wayne?
Open.
It's
Open.
in open session.
Okay.
It's the last part of the report.
Yeah, and the wording is in the document.
Okay, is it under economic development update?
No, it would be under Councillor Tweel. Look under event guidelines amendment. D.
That's under D.
D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll address it right there.
Councillor Ramsey?
Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah. Just an update. I didn't see it in the minutes. Maybe I missed it. I was asking about the financial statements for the Jack Frost, and I was told that they would be available already in May. Are they ready to be sent out?
The final report for Jack Frost.
Your Worship.
Your Worship.
What's that?
The final report for Jack Frost, Your Worship, is in its final stages right now. Once the city receives it from Capital City Events, Inc., who owns the report, then we will bring it forward to the committee.
Okay, so
We should receive it this month.
this month.
Yeah.
You'll send it out?
We'll actually bring it as an agenda item onto the next committee.
Okay.
Yeah, when this committee meets next, it'll be on the agenda.
So will it also include any, I know this,
Okay, thanks.
some of the venue sites will require repairs down there. That'll be incorporated in the report?
It will not be incorporated in the report. It doesn't really have anything to do with the final outcome of the event. And those repairs are between Capital City Events, Inc. and CADC. It's not a responsibility of the city.
Okay. Just last question, Mr. Chair. So when the report comes out, it'll give the members of that committee, right?
It will.
I tried to search it online, but I couldn't find who's on the Capital Cities Events, Inc. So
Yes. So you are correct, Your Worship. So it will be included. So a couple of things I would add here. Just let me step back for a second. The parking lot itself, just as an update for the committee, the snow has been removed in its entirety now with permission from CADC to get back on the lot. The lot has also been cleaned up. The chair of Capital City Events, Inc. is in discussions with Mr. Ron Waite with respect to Capital City Events, Inc.'s insurance paying for the damage to the pavement. So they're in communication. With respect to who is Capital City Events, Inc., it's an organization comprised of the Hotel Industry Association, Discover Charlottetown, Downtown Charlottetown, Inc., the Special Events Reserve Fund, and then I hold a city seat, which is non-voting. It's just a liaison position to the committee. But that information will be contained in the report.
Yeah. Who's the chair?
The chair is Craig Jones.
Correct.
With Rod's Hotels and Resorts, who is also the chair of the Hotel Association, BEI. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
And Your Worship,
Mr. Chair,
one other
Just a
quick item.
follow-up, Chair.
I just noticed in the minutes there that Councillor Twill had asked also that the Capital City Events Committee be welcome to a committee and after we have a chance to review so that might be a chance to ask them other questions that we're discussing.
And that invite has been extended. They asked to come at a
We're
meeting.
freezing up, Rory, if you're anywhere near here.
What's that?
What?
Sorry, keep going.
Sorry, I was just saying that the committee, the Capital City Events Inc. chair and committee will come present once the final report has been issued, so the committee can have a good dialogue with them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just Wayne,
Yes.
you were trying to clarify a point just after you were discussing the chair. Is that the point you were trying to make? Is that they will become a?
Yeah, what I was saying was the chair of the committee and perhaps other members will come before this standing committee of council once the final report has been completed to have some constructive dialogue back and forth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Good, thank you.
I think it's freezing.
Chair?
Sir, Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Okay, Councillor
Chair?
Twill.
Thank you. Thank you for that update, Wayne. I'm certainly looking forward to meeting with the Capital Cities Committee to have that dialogue. And one of the other recommendations I made to the committee is the Discover Charlottetown as well, to have that board come in and meet with our committee so we can have those discussions and have that dialogue as well, and to learn more about their mandate and some of their priorities and some of the challenges that they're working with.
Yeah, so Councillor Twill, the invitation was also extended to the executive director at Discover Charlottetown, who's Heidi Zinn. So she would love to come in and present. We do recognize that in the current COVID situation, it's not an ideal time for that to take place.
Okay.
She would prefer, once we start to meet in person again, to come in and present. They've been doing a lot of pivoting, just trying to refocus their marketing plans and what they're going to do during this tourism season. So once that has taken place and things have kind of resumed a bit more normalcy, then they'll gladly come in and present and have a discussion with the committee.
Okay, thank you, Laurel. So that would be the entire board?
No, it would just be the executive director, which would be Heidi Zinn, and possibly her other full-time staff, Chris McDonald.
What about the board members?
Well, it's a big board. If you wanted the chair to come in, the chair is Ben Murphy. So the invitation could be extended to him. But as just happened with meetings and conventions PEI, it would typically be the executive director that would come in and present, because the board, while they're more of an advisory board, it's not really a working board. So the executive director would have more information in terms of what you would be looking to discuss.
So Heidi Zen is the executive director. She's not the president.
Correct. So the president is Ben Murphy from Murphy Hospitality Group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good.
we all good?
All good.
Okay, let's go to reports. Laurel Lee, tourism.
Okay. So from a tourism perspective, things have been busy and they've been changing daily. We have been fortunate that we are very used to working remotely. Our jobs tend to take us on the road, so we have kind of been given a leg up in terms of productivity, and Charlotte is very used to having either myself or Wayne or both of us on the road and working through email and working through virtual meetings, so things have been going well. We have been taking a team approach with events on a lot of our operations right now, just given the shifting priorities and the added workload that has come with COVID-19 and trying to recapture some business. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on that, as I know that Wayne probably will during his update. There's a lot of COVID-19 specific things that we've been taking on, as well as some ongoing work that we've been doing primarily around the Canadian Urban Forest Conference and the World Under-17 Hockey Challenge, both events of which are still on the books for the fall that the city is hosting. So I'll allow Wayne to expand on that during his update. Some of you may have heard in the media today that today marks the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Holland. And if you think back to last fall, we had a discussion about a Liberation 75 tulip campaign with the committee that the Dutch Embassy and the National Capital Commission and the Canadian Tulip Festival had partnered to create this Liberation 75 beautiful orange tulip, and they were looking to plant 1.1 million of them in recognition of the 1.1 million Canadians who lost their lives during World War II. So those tulips, if you've been to City Hall lately, have started to poke up in the beds surrounding City Hall. There's actually a news release going out to alert the public to that. If it hasn't already gone out today, then it'll be going out shortly. We've been working with communications on that. And if things stay warm, we should see those start to bloom at any point in time. In terms of Canada Day, which will be our first civic celebration, there'll be much more of a detailed conversation that happens on the closed side of this agenda, but Charlotte and I have been working diligently and meeting quite regularly to discuss Canada Day programming, and we've been shifting our focus as new information on COVID comes to light. I've also been working very closely with Heidi and her team at Discover Charlottetown, as well as the Discover Charlottetown board. I have to give them props. They've done a tremendous job in pivoting to really try to refocus the tourism season this year. They've been really quick to react to ensure that Charlottetown remains top of mind for people that can't visit right now to plan for a future visit. They've also been really supportive of our operators in Charlottetown to ensure that they are prepared for whatever the tourism season looks like. So I did circulate some information to you. Everyone should be familiar with the local goods guide that they've been preparing weekly and circulating so that people know how they can support local business during this time. They've also, as I circulated, been conducting a doodle campaign with their graphic designer just to kind of keep people sharing Charlottetown on social media. Last week, they worked to prepare a discussion document for their members around what their business may look like during various phases of the Renew PEI Together plan. So it just offers questions that operators can ask themselves about what their business may look like in a particular phase and how they can be sustainable during this period. We know the tourism season is going to look very different than it has really during the last 5 or 6 years and even before that. So we want to ensure that everyone is operating at the top of their game in order to maximize any potential that they have during the season. Heidi has also been working closely with her regional destination marketing organization partners, and as a member of the National Tourism Board, she has been working with our partners at TIAC, the Tourism Industry Association of Canada, in order to provide Charlottetown-specific, PEI-specific, Atlantic Canadian-specific information related to the impacts COVID has had on tourism in Atlantic Canada, and ensure that that information is going before the federal government to benefit our tourism operators. There's been a lot of national collaboration going on in the tourism industry. Wayne will get into a few of the forums that we've been participating in weekly, but starting tomorrow, I'll actually be participating in a weekly meeting with some municipal event colleagues from across the country, primarily those that hold the civic event file. So this is being initiated out of the city of Halifax, and we'll be connecting weekly just to discuss what's going on in our municipalities, how civic events may be changing, and what that programming may look like, and also what some challenges and some obstacles that need to be overcome in each region are at any given time. As Wayne mentioned, the final report for Jack Frost is in its final stages. Because this year, the way that the management company worked was a little bit different. Capital City Events, who owns and operates the event, was responsible for kind of filing all of the government funding applications, whereas the event management company was responsible for the logistics. So there's two groups that are pulling together this one final report. So as a member of Capital Cities Events, I hold the SURF seat, which, like Wayne, is a non-voting position. I've kind of been the go-between between the two organizations to ensure that the information that government partners require is included in the report, as well as the logistical information that we need in order to track the event from year to year and kind of know what were challenges and what was a success. So that process is just about wrapped up. And then that report will go into the hands of Wayne to share with the committee. And then also on the Special Event Reserve Fund side of things, as we know, SURF falls to the terms of reference of this committee. So I chair SURF. Wayne acts as a secretariat. So we've been working with the SURF committee as well as the Tourism Accommodation Levy partners, so Discover Charlottetown and Meetings and Conventions PEI through the Hotel Association, to track from a financial perspective what our budgets may actually look like this year. We know that the TAL is entirely generated from room nights. So with the decline in the tourism industry, it's going to have a substantial impact on budgets. So we've been doing some projections based on indicators and providing that information through to our finance department so that all three organizations, Discover Charlottetown, Meetings and Conventions PEI, and the Special Event Reserve Fund, can budget as accurately as possible for this year. And that's everything, I believe. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for Laurel? It's all clear as mud?
I think the mayor has a question.
Your worship, do you have a question?
Laurel, just again, capital events, the two groups, there's the events management group, and what's the other one?
So there's Capital City Events, which is the industry organization, the nonprofit that Wayne mentioned, and then they hired an event manager, which was Tribu Experiential. That actually, Tribu Experiential, it's a Montreal-based company, so that contract went to RFP, and they were the successful respondent for that contract. And they actually physically executed from a logistics perspective the event. So both kind of need to talk in order to prepare a thorough report.
I met a couple of their staff there during the event. And then under, I brought this up under the Public Works Committee, Make Our Hometown Beautiful. We thought it was over in that department. They're saying, no, it's with Economic Development, Tourism. Do we know where it is?
I think Peter will need to weigh in. It was originally, there was some transition and it had temporarily moved here. But Peter, do you recall Is it sitting with beautification or is it sitting with sustainability?
As I understand, Your Worship, it was because Public Works take care of the beautification program. It was going. The funds were going back to them, Your Worship.
Okay. Yeah, so I think what we'll do is, as soon as we can get an opportunity to get together, Laurel, we'd like to sit down and discuss it, because the tulips to commemorate Canadian soldiers, you're right, it's today, right? This is the commemoration?
Yeah, it's today.
And there was also Ian Scott, who was looking at doing something with that green park between the hotel,
Fire Hall and the Rod Charlottetown.
Yeah. So it may not happen this year, but it's something that we can look down the road. And last but not least, Mr. Chair, as Laurel said, the TAL is going to be greatly affected by this year's events. And looking at the budget, Laurel, for this year under tourism, I know under the closed session, I'm just going to ask some questions about where we're going with the revenue and expenditure side. Like TAL, I don't know where that's going to end up. There's nothing being put in the pot now, right?
No, Your Worship.
No, there's nothing right now.
And as of today, Your Worship, both partners on the TAL with the city, the Hotel Association, which they put their money to meetings and conventions, and Discover Charlottetown, they have both cut their annual TAL contributions in half. So they would receive, let's say, an average of $400,000 each annually. So they've cut them to $200,000, and the TAL contributions makes up half of the operational budgets for each of those organizations.
I know. Wayne and Laurel, I'm going to bring that up under the closed session to get some more details.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anything else for Laurel? Laurel, are you on the State of Tourism dashboard? Is that you too?
Yeah, that's me too.
Okay.
So in your package, you'll see that there's a report called the State of Tourism Dashboard. So these dashboards are a weekly report that are being made available through our national partners at the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. They're being prepared by a TIAC member, 2031, which is a tourism-based consulting firm from Vancouver. And coincidentally enough, 2031 is also the firm that was engaged by Tourism PEI to prepare the 5-year plan that they're working on. My understanding is that there's been some shifting in what that plan is going to look like, which is good, because if it had been prepared before, then obviously projections would be quite different. But long story short, those reports, dashboard reports, are being prepared weekly. The most recent one we actually have received, so I'll circulate it to you after the meeting. But it's a really good, if you have a bit of time, it's a really good overview of not only global insights in the tourism industry and what impacts COVID is having globally, but also Canadian insights. So basically, it's kind of a media poll of everything that's being said about tourism. So it gives you a nice snapshot of what insights may be coming forward in any particular week. So there's some really good ones about, the event sector. That's it, Kevin. They are projecting that both the overall size of an event as well as the required mode of transportation for an attendee to get to it. So if it's a short haul flight, if they can get there in their own personal vehicle, are going to be factors that are weighed heavily in an attendee's decision moving forward to attend an event. So that's important to keep in mind during the planning process. Also, Airbnb is always a hot topic on everyone's minds lately. So there's a nice insight in there that they successfully pivoted to highlight their long-term rentals versus the nightly rentals that they normally would. And during the last 2 weeks of March, they actually saw a 20% increase in long-term rentals through Airbnb. So that's a good insight to have. Something that I found really interesting that really kind of captures the impact that this is having is United Airlines in the United States. During the month of May that we're currently in, they're projecting they will fly fewer people during the entire month of May than they did on a single day in May last year. So if you think about that in terms of scale, it really is quite a substantial impact. As of right now in that report, the projections that they're making in terms of a return of tourism interprovincially seems to line up with what Renew PEI Together is currently projecting. So they're thinking mid to late June, possibly early July is when we may start to see the initiation of that interprovincial travel. only time will tell. But as I mentioned, if you have some time, take a read through. It's really good information, and I will circulate dashboard number 3 following this meeting, which will have updated information from last week.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Is that it for Laurel?
Yes. Oh, the mayor has a question. We can't hear you, or I can't anyway.
No, I can't either.
I went through it last night,
Yeah,
and if you look at aviation,
yeah,
it's having a significant impact, not just globally, but look at our own airport. You
I
talked to
know.
Doug Newsom.
Yeah.
You're saying that we could look at something back coming in June or July? Sort
just
of a bounce back?
intra-provincial travel, and that's not necessarily even a significant increase in flights. That could be that borders between provinces are opening to vehicle traffic. From an airline perspective, right now they're projecting a 3 to 5 year recovery.
And I looked at the cruise ship.
Yeah.
I think we had, 119 booked for this year, right? That's gone. But while cruising has virtually come to a halt, the industry is preparing for its long-term recovery through activities such as health framework planning, reassessing cruise travel. So that, like, long-term effects will have an impact in Charlottetown.
Yeah, and cruise, in terms of bookings, some of the major cruise industries are currently reporting that bookings are for 2021 are in line with what 2020 initially was, if not slightly higher. So they are optimistic that people do see cruise as a tourism method as soon as we kind of can come out of this pandemic. So it's promising to see that people are still booking cruise for next year, even though it definitely was a contended point in terms of the pandemic right now.
Yeah, but my concern is when you read it, it says such as health framework planning, reassessing cruise travel consumer perceptions and barriers, and highlighting small ship options. So that could mean that some of the ports that are already on their itinerary may be shifted to somewhere else. And that, I'm sure, is a concern to Mike Cochran, who is the manager of Charlottetown.
Port Charlottetown. Yeah, and I think that what Atlantic Canada has going for it is that we have been relatively sheltered from the high numbers of the pandemic. So what we're hoping is that people will see this as a safe travel option.
Right.
So only really at the end of the day, only time will tell. But I know that promoting this as a safe travel destination, as a destination that hasn't been as severely impacted, we've had no hospitalizations, we've had low case numbers, we don't currently have a lot of active cases. That is going to be something that weighs heavily on tourism campaigns moving forward, because that is what people are going to want to know.
And that's why it's important with the protocol that you can continually hear on media about physical distancing. That's going to be important. I think that'll come up later in our discussions here.
Yeah, and if you've been following Discover Charlottetown on social media, you'll see that they've been very selective in photos that they've posted, that they've been posting, wide open spaces, and they've been posting our parks, and they've been posting individual picnics versus large-scale event photos with a lot of people, just to try to highlight that it is a low-density place to come in terms of population. So you can have a great vacation, but still take part in physical distancing.
And Wayne, just before you talk, are you getting some photos of our chair in that in those PR efforts, public relations efforts?
Of Kevin?
Yes, well, just promoting.
Well, we got to push you aside, Your Worship, because you're always front and center.
Sorry, Wayne, go ahead.
Your Worship, you'll take an note that for at least Eastern Canada, primary mode of transportation, not only vehicle, but moving people on Via Rail.
Oh, good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Laurel.
You're welcome.
God, you're almost long-winded as the mayor.
Listen, I haven't seen you in so long. I just needed to bring you up to speed, even though I talked to you last night.
Okay.
Just to remind everybody, please, we are on streaming live, and so commentary gets carried as you carry the word. So, Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Great report, Laurel.
Wayne Long, events management update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a number of things. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Hop in at any time if there are any questions. We have a lot of focus right now, and we're operating on a team effort with myself, Laurel, and Charlotte with respect to a number of files. But event hosting, as we know, a number of events are being impacted in 2020. A good number of major events, which we have also bid on. So we have been working aggressively to ensure that we don't completely lose that business in its entirety. So I'm happy to report that a high percentage of those events that we lost this year or will lose, we will secure them for next year, and 1 to 2 in the year after that in 2022. So while we're losing the business currently, we have been successful to ensure that those events remain on our calendar for future years. So that's taking a great effort, and we're very pleased with the outcomes to date with respect to that. We're also tracking that, as you know, on a spreadsheet and involving meetings and conventions PEI every Friday. The committee will receive an email from myself that has live updates on events, what their status is, and you'll be able to track that for the next bit. Same goes for annual events. We're in a lot of regular communication with annual events. Some of them have canceled outright, yet others are still proceeding as if they're on, and some others have looked to go virtual as well. So we're working closely with those events. Understand that the province will come out with a statement around events specifically in early June, or that's at least what we're hearing from event organizers who have been in communication with the province. So that will allow us to get a better understanding of where we're going late summer and into the fall. We've also been supporting the industry when we can during this difficult time. Charlotte has been doing a fantastic job on this particular file. She spends hours each week participating on the International Festivals and Events Association and Canadian Sport Tourism Alliance webinars, and she inventories and collects the information, and in turn creates a weekly newsletter that goes to many event organizers throughout the city, cultural events, sporting events, festivals and events. So she has a good reach, and there's a good high percentage participation in that. I believe there's at least 1 or 2 councillors on our committee who have requested to receive those. I believe you, Councillor Ramsey, and Councillor Yankoff. We've also been working closely with national organizations with respect to ongoing communications and organizations who are lobbying the federal government with respect to reinvestments in the events industry moving forward, namely the Canadian Sport Tourism Alliance, the Festivals and Events, Major Events Association of Canada, and Event Atlantic. We're also working closely with respect to tourism driving platform with our partners, so our event attraction division, along with Discover Charlottetown, as well as meetings and convention PEI. All 3 of those organizations drive heavy visitation to Charlottetown. We're trying to determine if there's a path forward to work collectively with respect to recovery and or possibly securing federal funding with respect to in-turn strategy. Also very aggressive with bidding and prospecting still. A reminder to the committee that this is ongoing. We work 3 to 4, sometimes 5 years down the road with respect to securing business. So that part of our file is business as normal, and we continue to work day in and day out with respect to that for future business. Working closely with the Canada Games committee with respect to securing pre-test sporting events. You have to host a number of sporting events to test venues, etc., in advance of the games, and we're working closely with them because Charlottetown is a strong sport tourism destination, and we're bidding all the time. We're also working closely with them on Jack Frost 2023. The Canada Games will be during the times which Jack Frost normally happens annually. So we need to determine a path forward for Jack Frost in 2023. A number of projects on the move. Continue to work on the new website for our sport tourism brand SCORE. We're working on a sport tourism video that will continue for the next few months. Laurel mentioned a couple of files, U17 hockey and the Urban Forestry Conference. Both events are scheduled for the fall and still on schedule, but likely to be impacted in some way. We'll have a better idea in early June with respect to both events for the fall. And then finally, working closely with the Eastlink Center and the Bell Alliance Center, who are also impacted drastically by this situation with respect to their day-to-day operations. There's a lot of maintenance happening at both venues, and as everyone knows, the Eastlink Center is currently serving as a provincial health site with respect to testing and clinics and as such. So that's lots happening. That's just kind of a quick summarized overview of my area.
Excellent. Any questions for Wayne?
Any questions?
I have a question,
Yes, Alana, or Councillor Yankoff, go ahead.
and I'm not sure if this was for Wayne or for Laurel, but I was out running the other day, and down at the Confederation Landing, the Quebec Garden, there's supposed to be signage there. Do you know if there's any update on when that signage is going to be put up there?
Yeah, so Councillor Yankoff, there's the Quebec Garden, as you referenced. The English version of that garden is on an actual stone. It's etched in the stone, sorry. Public Works through beautification, I've communicated with them several months ago, and they are responsible for installing a permanent Francophone sign within that garden. And that has not happened to date. I noticed it myself a couple of weeks ago, but I did send communication to Scott Adams, manager of Public Works. Perhaps we can follow up again with Mr. Adams to determine the status of that project. We did receive inquiries from the City of Quebec as well. A couple of their residents were visiting here and noticed that the French version of the sign was gone. There was a temporary one there in the beginning, but the permanent sign has not been installed, and we need to circle back with Public Works.
Great. Thank you. When you were talking, just on another note, you were talking about events and booking events 5 years out. I wanted to let you know that some of the calls that I've been on, looks as if there's going to be a good chunk of federal dollars coming to the provinces and the municipalities over the coming months and years, similar to the whole marquee event thing where they're just going to be trying to jumpstart the economy again. So that might be great for 2021 or the fall of 2020, depending on when things are really get back. And I'm sure you're aware of that, but I believe that the Prime Minister is supposed to be making a little bit more of a follow-up announcement on Wednesday about that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that's trending right now is everything is important, obviously, during this challenging situation. But people, one of the first things they're going to be looking forward to is events. And so events are going to be in demand when we can connect together again safely and with permissions of federal and provincial health authorities. And there's a lot of talk about recovery events. If you think about, the impact the event sector is having right now, just think about this fall alone, some of the events that we lost, and people would normally gather around those. And even this summer, we have a lot of signature events. Events are an opportunity not only to drive economic and tourism prosperity, but it's a real conduit for socializing people, for interacting and celebrating together. So you're very much correct. Events are going to be looked at as one of the first things that people are going to want to return to when they can, and there will be federal initiatives and programs coming in the near future.
Fantastic. The more the merrier. Is that it for you, or you got the events guidelines amendment, Wayne? Do you have?
Chair, I have a question.
Mr.
Oh,
Chair, I have a
sorry,
question.
Councillor Creel.
Wayne, thank you for your synopsis with regards to events and where we're going in terms of trying to revitalize our economy. from an events, and of course working with Laurel from a tourism perspective. People have already come to the conclusion that it's not going to be a very prosperous tourism season, regardless of whether it's people just coming here from a passive point of view, just wanting to come here and enjoy our beaches and our hospitality here in Charlottetown. Do we have some kind of a status report as to when there's going to be the opening of the interprovincial commuting back and forth? That means, let's look at, say, Nova Scotia, and let's look at New Brunswick for an example. If people want to travel back and forth, do we have some kind of a status report as to whether or not the restrictions are going to be somewhat lessened? And you know, I know there's different phases, but do we have any idea of when those restrictions might be lifted? Maybe not altogether, but in some cases.
I would say a couple of things, Councillor Tweel, and Laurel can hop in. The dashboard report that Laurel referred to, I think there is some national reference in there with respect to what a forecast might look like. With respect to specific to the Atlantic region, I don't have detailed information because it's a provincial responsibility. But I do know that the Premier of Prince Edward Island and the Premier of New Brunswick have consistently said that they are in ongoing dialogue with respect to what interprovincial travel might look like between those two provinces moving forward. I haven't heard anything much as of late with respect to Nova Scotia. They've been hit somewhat harder than both Prince Edward Island and New Brunswick. The last that I heard in terms of timelines was a reevaluation in June sometime. Some people say that it could be a later in June opening. Some others say that it could be early July. It's very much in the hands of the provincial governments and their health organizations. Your question is a very good one. That's the number one question of tourism operators and businesses, as it's really their only chance of gaining any momentum with respect to a second half of the tourism season.
Just to follow up, Wayne, you know, the Premier made a statement publicly that he would like to see Wood Islands, for example, open up even earlier, a month earlier, and I can understand the tourism industry in the eastern part of Prince Edward Island, but Charlottetown also has a lot to gain or lose if, you know, Wood Islands is not functional, it's not open where transportation is taking place, whether it be the trucking industry, goods and services, or people from Nova Scotia and that part of Nova Scotia wanting to come to Prince Edward Island like they've done traditionally on an annual basis. I wonder, Chair, if it'd be prudent for the City of Charlottetown to issue a statement or pass a resolution supporting the opening of Wood Islands, opening up earlier and supporting any type of economic development or tourism in that part of Prince Edward Island, because, you know, regardless of whether it's in Eastern PEI or Western PEI or Central PEI, Charlottetown, it benefits our tourism industry, our restaurants, our hotels, motels, and all of our businesses. So I just thought I'd bring that to the table, that maybe it would be advantageous to bring in a resolution supporting the opening up of Wood Islands even earlier, supporting our neighbors down in the eastern part of the province, because they do well, we do well.
Yeah, it'd be something that we can look at, but at the same time, on the news last night, they're not opening up the borders at all from New Brunswick to PEI. Premier Hicks, whoever his name is, said that. He said, and then the health minister or the health board was on saying that they do not. You can travel with inside your province, but even if you're traveling, doesn't mean you go to Moncton or Fredericton or anything like that. Stay within your own little city or town. They're not encouraging it, but once again, they both said they're not opening up the borders yet. As far as the trucking industry, that's about the only one that they're concerned at Wood Islands because of the long haul, is what I've been reading and talking to people. And they're not going to allow people to come over just for the sake of coming over. It's essential stuff, and it's your trucking and all that, and that's the impression I'm getting from them.
Well, having said that, I think that these are my own thoughts. I think it'll be advantageous for the city of Charlottetown to show support for Eastern PEI and to show them that we certainly share with them and thinking of them in terms of their challenges and the struggles that they're going to have when it comes to the tourism season and people wanting to commute back and forth. And Wood Islands is very important to Prince Edward Island. So again, I'll just reiterate, Eastern PEI does well, and we here in the capital city, we do well. So Wayne, maybe that's something we could, we could pursue at a later date. We get some more information, but it certainly doesn't hurt to support our friends and neighbors down in Eastern PEI.
Thank you. Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Your Worship.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to ask Wayne. Wayne, what's the status of Andrews Hockey School? It's one of the key tenants at the Bell Alliance Center, and a lot of their athletes come from not outside of the province, but from the northeastern United States. Any update?
Well, there's two things, Your Worship. You're bang on right. Andrews is valuable to Charlottetown's economy, especially at this time of the year. So they've lost all their spring hockey tournaments, which are huge currently, or just about all of them. And until such a time the border reopens, they will not have any hockey schools.
Yeah, a significant loss to Bell Alliance revenue.
It is.
And just to add to what Wayne has said, Charlotte has been in relatively close communication with them just in terms of the weekly update that everyone has been receiving from Wayne. And Andrews has indicated to Charlotte as recently as last week that they will be making a decision early this month on what happens with their summer programming.
Wow. It's a
And
big blow.
Your Worship, you're bang on, right? Like, think about all those families that come from the U.S. They'll stay here for a full week of hockey school and then take a full week of vacation. So some of them are here for 2 weeks at a time. The impact on Bell Alliance Center rental is one thing. The impact on the economy is another.
Yeah. And, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just to follow up what Councillor Yankoff stated about the Quebec City Park, or the Quebec City Monument.
Yeah.
I did bring Wayne spoke to me about that a couple of months ago. I brought that up to Mr. Adams, and I don't know what we're waiting for, but the snow's gone. We got staff coming back on, so we have to make a priority. So I'm going to ask the chair if he can follow up with Mr. Adams
Yes.
to get this done. Like we go to Quebec, and they have signage and a park dedicated to Charlottetown in both languages, and they come down here, and we got a rock with no sign on it.
Okay, leave that with me, and after our meeting, I will talk to Mr. Kelly, and we'll talk to Mr. Adams about that. Is that fair?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up with Wayne regarding Alan Andrews Hockey School. Wayne, has the board of directors removed both ice pads? I know when they made their announcement back several weeks ago, one ice pad was taken out, but were both ice pads taken out? And if they left one, what would the cost be to maintaining that ice pad, even though it's not being utilized?
Well, Councillor Tweel, there's a couple of things at play here. So the pools have been completely emptied, and McLaughlin Arena A, the ice has come out. So there's a huge maintenance program being in place right now happening. A lot of work is being done. You may recall the city had ongoing communications through the EMO with respect to keeping the ice in Arena 2 in the event that we needed that to serve for emergency purposes associated with death or otherwise in the COVID-19, morgue, I guess, is the proper terminology to be using, or holding area. It's not very nice to talk about that, but you need to be proactive in terms of your planning. The Bell Alliance Center board would ask the same question, Councillor Tweel, how much does it cost to keep the ice in? So it was going to take a month or two to kind of get the next billing in order to do a calculation to try to determine how much it's costing to keep the ice in.
So again, thank you for that. So again, what was the rationale for keeping the one ice pad in?
It was just a request of our EMO in the event to be planned for a state if we should need it within emergency purposes.
Yeah, I'd leave it at that, Wayne.
Leave it at
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
not only that, Wayne, provincial EMO will be paying for that, correct? Yeah.
It's
so
my understanding.
Any cost for keeping that ice there, Councillor Tweel, will be paid by Prince Edward Island EMO, correct, Wayne?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
I know that they are paying.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could you send me that in writing, Your Worship?
No, Wayne will send that to you. He sits on the
Well,
board.
I thought you knew about it, so I thought you'd send it to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Wayne, you want to do your which events guidelines amendment?
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you have a short report in your package and the guidelines. The committee, we made an amendment to the to the guidelines back in February in order to accommodate sustainability efforts of the Sustainability Committee and staff. Councillor Tweel had requested at our last meeting when we reviewed the guidelines that there be an expansion of the reference to the city's smoke-free places bylaw within the guidelines, although we do have a standalone bylaw. So if you look at the guidelines, staff had talked to the CAO a while back, and we expanded on the section, so it's on page 4. You'll see it that it's highlighted. It didn't copy great when it's photocopying, but you'll see a darker section, and it's called the Smoke-Free Places Bylaw. There's entire wording right there, right out of the bylaw itself. It also talks about signage on site, that events have to promote the bylaw by way of event signage on site, ticket notations, on-site public service announcements, etc. And farther down in the document, it also talks about working with the city's communications department to communicate this message at large through the proper platforms when required. So we've beefed that up to align with the actual wording right from the Smoke-Free Places bylaw. The committee will also recall that this past week, Councillor Tweel's committee, I believe, through communications, reissued a communique around the Smoke-Free Places bylaw that people are starting to gather in larger groups outdoors now and return to outdoor venues. So we'd ask the committee to support this, and we have to move it through a resolution to council to accept it at the May meeting.
Chair? Wayne, first of all, I want to thank the staff in your deliberations with the CAO. That's exactly what I was looking for. I think that by having that stand alone in the events policy makes it crystal clear to not only adhering but full compliance with the smoke-free bylaw. Because as you know, whenever there's any type of a gathering, whether it be Natal Day, Canada Day, or any events that do take place in our city, the onus is on the event organizers, whether it be internally or externally, to have the signage, make those announcements consistently, because that is the direction that we have moved towards with respect to when we first brought in the policy a number of years ago. Wayne, you can recall that. And then we put more teeth in by bringing in a smoke-free bylaw. So I'm very pleased with the amendment and look forward to a smoke-free city in terms of our green spaces and our parks and recreation venues and facilities.
And as I always say, Councillor Tweel, staff aim to please.
Well, in this particular case, Wayne, put a big A+ beside the staff.
Here.
Mr. Kelly, do we have to make a motion for a resolution?
You should refer it on to council for the ratification.
Okay.
I'll move it.
You'll move it, Your Worship?
Council Tweel did. Councilor Trio moved it.
Okay,
Second, as long as he got his office back, Kevin.
you ain't getting that back, Mitchell. Okay, is that it for that, Wayne?
That's the end of my information for this session.
Thank you very much. Now, let's go to economic development update. Ron Atkinson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to start with a couple of items that didn't get to touch on. We ran out of time since our last meeting. I want to touch on quickly. Met with this, so this is obviously before COVID-19, but met with 7 trade commissioners. Global Affairs Canada were doing a tour, bringing people from around the world. And so we entertained them here from Brazil, Japan, Hong Kong, New York, places in between. And so we were able to give them the value proposition of Charlottetown. And we've been doing this more in recent years. It's valuable meetings because these folks around the world have their offices in their particular locations and are meeting with companies that have specific needs, looking at direct investment in foreign locations. And so it's an opportunity for us to tell them what we are. So that was very good meeting. Hope to have more of those in the future. And very quick note, attended a Partnership Growth Network roundtable meeting that numerous municipalities were participating in that as well. So since lockdown, and a lot has changed since then, one of the things we've been doing is having regular communication, teleconference get-togethers with our contact in UK. Person that we've worked with quite a bit in the past, and we're discussing ways of how we're going to promote kind of coming out of all of this, because what we are experiencing here, they are experiencing everywhere else pretty much. And so we're discussing our approaches to companies, with the change in business travel, how we get in front of them, and how in situations like this that we want to be able to promote ourselves. So valuable conversations that we're having. I've got another one later this week with him. Tremendous person for us. So that is continuing in that vein. I want to jump quickly to Art in the Open. And we've been talking a lot about events, and I sit on the board of Art in the Open, event that happens at the end of every summer. And that particular group, they are still working, if it is possible, to have the festival happen this year. And they're exploring ways where there may be flexibility, perhaps having it spread over time and place, reducing density. They've got curators that are setting a vision for it, looking to reimagine the event. They would like to have it nailed down 6 weeks in advance of the event. But I think the good thing is that they're optimistic. They're feeling an event like this is very much needed, kind of at a time like this, in a summer like this, with everything that's going on. So just good to hear that group is kind of pushing forward. I know that things are changing by the week, but hopeful that can happen. I guess as well under the cultural, the Arts Advisory Board didn't meet in the last month, but they're still getting feedback on their Imagine Charlottetown project. So I'm sure they'll be getting together at some point in time in the future to discuss that further. I want to give an update. I sent some information out there a week or so ago. We had a quarterly meeting of the PEI BioAlliance, and a quick update on some of the points with that particular technology sector. 90% of the companies still operating. Some 1,800 folks still at work. Key multinational companies that we have here, continuing operations. They're keeping an eye on their global supply chains, and because they operate globally, just everything that's happening around the world with bio, it's health related. So there's actually good prospects. There's one of our key companies is at 100% capacity and looking to double the production. They're looking at expansion to double one of their products. So I think that bio really wants to, in the situation that we're in right now, as we come out of this, bio wants to be one of our solutions provincially and in our city. They're still looking at breaking ground on one of the key projects that we've talked about in this committee, looking at breaking ground in 2020, which is terrific. So just some green shoots, as we call it, of good things that are happening there. I would mention briefly a group that I've been working with over the last kind of the year and a half, but spending of all the people that we're interacting with right now is probably, this group is maybe more than anybody else, and I'll bring some more information to it next month. But Invest in Canada is a really tremendous new working partner for us, particularly in foreign direct investment work. And just have been engaged in regular calls, teleconference calls with them, and in particular a new office that they've established in Halifax. So he and I are going to be on regular calls, probably every second week, to look at how things are going, look at doing some working together, doing status check on businesses here, so on and so forth. But they're looking at just being a great benefit to us. They're going to really help us develop things like data sets and statistics that were very difficult for us to get before, but those are things that are really helpful for us for developing new marketing. Mentioned as well, another thing that we're, the PI Association for Newcomers, they have an immigration partnership group. We have calls every week that we're on with them, with organizations and other communities, just having a discussion on status of how things are going, discussing ideas and issues, and providing feedback. So that's a valuable group as well. And the other thing I'd mentioned, I got contact from the Trade Commission service in Mumbai, India. Introduced us to a potential incoming tech company. It's not finalized yet, but just great to hear from them. So I think that given the challenges overall that we're facing, in those knowledge economy sectors, there's just some reason for hope. There's some good things happening, and so we look forward to kind of more advancement there as we go down the road. And I would just have a couple of other additional discussion items under our next section. So I think I'll leave it at that rate for now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ron. Anything for Ron?
Good.
I do.
Go ahead, Your Worship.
Ron, great report. Ron, BioVector, are they at full capacity?
I didn't get the report on whether they were at full capacity, Your Worship, but they're certainly one of the really, really important companies in our city, and just have done fantastic work. And I know they're one of those companies that certainly gives us hope for the future.
And what about Figure? Are they,
I don't have anything new relative to that.
So which company did you mention was on full capacity in terms of in production or just employees on site?
I believe in their operations. I think that one may have been Elanco.
Elanco, okay. And just one last question on Art in the Open. I'm just looking in your budget. What do we provide for that festival? Is it 16,000?
Is 16,000.
So are we planning to advance that to them so they can start planning?
Yes, haven't received any invoices yet, but that would be would anticipate that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Okay.
Chair?
Yes, Councillor Trio.
I'm not sure if I would bring it up under Ron Atkinson's report or Wayne Long's report in terms of events, but as you know, the recent announcement of the cancellation of the Charlottetown Festival was a decision that has a great impact and effect on the city of Charlottetown and our businesses, whether it be restaurants, bars, hotels, motels. The economic spin-offs are overwhelmingly positive, and with the cancellation of the Charlottetown Festival, the first time since 1965, when the Charlottetown Festival had its debut. This is a tremendous loss for our economy here in the city of Charlottetown, and I would argue for all of Prince Edward Island. So I don't know what we can do in the interim by reaching out to the board of directors of the Confederation Center, Ron or Wayne, or maybe a combined effort, but I would suggest that with the loss of the Charlottetown Festival, maybe something could be done in the fall if we put our heads together and try to be creative and innovative. Maybe we could do something for the fall, for September, for October, November, December. I'm just thinking out loud. but the Charlottetown Festival is just too valuable and too important from an economic point of view, from a tourism point of view, from a number of different perspectives. It's just too valuable, and we're going to miss that sorely. I mean, Confederation Center of the Arts means a lot to this city and this province. So I know they had to make a very difficult decision, and it's a big loss for our economy. And I'm sure it was very difficult for that board of directors. And I know a lot of those members personally. I have a great deal of respect for them. But I think we should try to reach out to the board of directors. I think we should try to see what we can map out a bit of a strategy in the fall, and see if we can at least try to make some inroads with respect to an event or events that could take place at the Confederation Center of the Arts, and let's try to recover some of those economic losses. So that's huge, and no one can ever there's no words to describe how important the Confederation Center is to this city and this province. So I bring that to you, Ron. I bring that to you, Wayne, and I'm certainly willing to work alongside both you gentlemen with the board of directors of the Confederation Center to see what could be done in the fall to try to start the road of economic recovery.
Mr. Chair.
I wouldn't mind jumping in there for a second, unless you want to go ahead first, Your Worship.
No, you go. That's
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Twill, for those words. I'm on weekly calls with the CEO of the Confederation Center, and he and his artistic director and the artistic team are already planning a fall, a fall event of some sort, or a late summer. The only thing that they have canceled is the actual Charlottetown Festival of the Four Plays. That's the only thing. The doors are not locked up. They are waiting on the direction of the public health office, as the rest of the events centers here in downtown Charlottetown. And I do know that Steve Bellamy and the artistic group are working on it. So with Wayne and Ron reaching out, it would not be the board of directors that they would reach out to. I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ron, but I would think that if you were going to get any follow-up information, it would be through the CEO and the artistic team. I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Councillor Lana.
This past week.
Hold her, one at a time.
Okay, I'd like to respond.
No.
Thank you for your response.
I was in the order, Mr. Chair. I was after Councillor Yankoff. Councillor Yankoff, hats off to the Guild and what they're trying to do. But I think you're very familiar with the Stratford Festival, Councillor Yankoff.
I am. Yeah.
It's a $79 million operation, and as you know, they canceled their festival, first time ever. So if we're looking for comparisons, let's reach out to Stratford, the town of Stratford, or the municipality of Stratford in Ontario, to ask what they're doing. But to follow up again with Councillor Yankoff, we do have a board rep on the national board. It's Councillor Mike Duffy. So I think what we have to do is we have to allow the operations of the facility, that is Steve Bellamy and his team, to go forward with the plan that they're going with right now. I know firsthand, Councillor Twill, my wife who works there, the gallery and its operations are at a status quo. They're looking for more funding from the federal government to maintain operations. But again, let's look at what's going on in other jurisdictions. And we have one up in Stratford, Ontario, Stratford Festival. So let's not sound the alarms and get everything going on all fronts. There's an operations organization already in place at the Confederation Center, led by Steve Bellamy, who's doing a great job there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let me attempt to bring some more clarity to the points that I was raising. When I talked about approaching the Confederation Center and sending messages to the Board of Governors, of course, from a protocol and procedural point of view when it comes to contacting, of course, Ron Atkinson and Wayne Long would reach out to the CAO of the Confederation Center. I wanted to send the message not only to senior administration, but also to the board of directors that I believe, this is a great time to be creative and innovative, and for the city of Charlottetown to work alongside, shoulder to shoulder with senior administration in the Confederation Center, as well as delivering a message to the Board of Governors just how important the Confederation Center is to the city of Charlottetown and the province of Prince Edward Island. So I certainly understand the protocol and the procedure. That's the point I was trying to make. So having said that, I do believe it would be advantageous that those discussions begin immediately because despite the fact that they're working on a plan of action, I think that with the coordination and with the help and support of the city of Charlottetown, I believe that we can make it that much better because of our professional staff here with the city and some of the assets that we have and some of the professionalism that we have sitting around the table. It's a win-win. So that's why I bring it forward, Chair Ramsey, and I certainly look forward to
we're going to be looking into
some of those deliberations and some of those discussions.
Excellent. Good point.
Councillor Tree, I was just going to say quickly, I did catch on the media somewhere that the province was having discussions with the centre over the very same thing, and they were talking about an elevated amount of funding. Has anyone else heard that?
No,
Yes.
I have, yeah.
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Province and Wayne, the federal government too.
Okay.
Thank you, Wayne.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Great points, Councillor Twill. Okay, we're going to move to a closed session. As per section 119, 1 subsection B of the PEI Municipal Government Act.
Just stand by. Sorry, go ahead.
Motion.
Sorry, go ahead.
By Councillor Yankoff, second by Councillor McLeod.
Okay, just stand by, please. We have to change over.